Crystal pottery is a special glazing method in which an excess of zinc oxide and silica are used to actually grow crystals, very similar to how they grow in nature. The specific origins are unknown, but can be traced to an Asian descent due to the crystals only being able to grow on porcelain. The first controlled crystalline glazes were once again an accident conducted in 1885 at the Sèvres National Porcelain Factory in Paris. Two chemists at Sèvres, Charles Lath and Georges Dutilly, realized that glazes made with an oversaturation of zinc silicate could develop crystals. It was briefly ignored until 1897 when Sèvres started working with the crystalline glazes, though the test did not last long due to most resources being put into the funding of World War I. Fast forward a few decades and a man by the name of David Snare wrote an article in 1975 published in Ceramics Monthly magazine called Making and Firing Crystalline Glazes. This was one of the first highly publicized articles on crystalline glazes. To this day, many crystalline glaze potters are still using David's glaze recipes or variations thereof.
This is an interesting type of art form in that you have to be kind of part scientist and part artist. You have to do left brain, right brain with this kind of art. We must test, probably 300-400 different tests before we get one good glaze. So you're constantly doing that, but once you hit that one glaze, it's magic, and you just run with that, and forever. I'm one of these blessed people, and I got into this because I had a high school ceramics teacher. I had him for 4 years, and he was just incredible. And there were about 6 of us that would spend maybe 2-3 hours a day in his class, and he was just absolutely incredible. And but I didn't think there was much money being a potter, so I went to college and then grew a business for 25 years, and after I built it up, I sold it. And one day my son comes back from high school and says, "Hey, Dad, I'm in this pottery class, I'm in this ceramics class." The next thing I know, he and I are down buying wheels and kilns and doing this together. You always try to find something that you can do with one of your kids. So he and I are down doing this together and just having a ball. And I find this guy in the UK, Peter Ilsley, who's probably one of the grandmasters of crystalline pottery. He helps me with developing a lot of these glazes and techniques.
You're going to get that.
Okay, all right.
That is that.
And then my son goes off to college. And, I'm retired at the time, left with all this ceramics equipment and everything else, and a love for this crystalline art and crystalline pottery, and that's how I started. Basically what we're trying to do is mimic what nature does. And we take the porcelain piece up to about 2,400 degrees, and we crash cool it in the kiln down to about 2,000 degrees. And what happens is, in this little center of this nuclei here, the crystals start to grow because just like frost on a window, crash cools, and these overabundance of zinc has no place to go, and so they'll all start to line up here, and we can actually change the shape and the style of this crystal by temperature. And so we'll take some up to 2,000 degrees, we'll drop it to 1850, and then to 2,000 degrees, and then 1850, and then 2,000 degrees, and make it look like a little pebble in a pond where you drop it and it kind of spreads out. And we're actually painting the crystals on here by temperature inside the kiln. And so consequently what happens is that every time you do that, it changes the size, the shape. You have no idea what you're going to get. Every piece that comes out is going to be different. And that's why this is so exciting, is because you never know what you're going to get when you open up the kiln. Since we are actually putting crystals inside the glaze on the pottery, I thought that it would be a great finish to actually put a Mother Nature crystal on the top and use it as the finial on the top. Part of the fun for me is that I'll go, for an example, to a gem and mineral show, travel 1,000 miles to a gem and mineral show, and find this mineral that came out of some foreign country that they found some dig, and there's only one mine that they've ever found. And I'll take that mineral back here, and Tom Wallach and I will develop these glazes to try to hit that mineral. After the piece comes out of the kiln, I have thousands of these different gems and minerals, and that's the fun for me, because that's when I go and match up the pieces and see what they all look like. But it's just this putting the natural crystal on something that we made inside of the kiln that matches the similar part on the piece. Take a look at the crystal formation, the crystal structure, and you can see this white outline outside this crystal. Well, I just happen to have blade selenite from Mexico that has a white tip. It's natural, comes that way out of nature. So that's how we finish off our pieces. The history of crystalline pottery and ceramics is quite fascinating. It started with the Chinese about 900 AD to maybe 1200 AD. And they had two things going for them. They had what they called white gold, which was porcelain, and the world did not have porcelain, and they kept it as an incredibly guarded secret. And the other thing that they had was this mistake that they came upon, which is crystalline glazing. And no one in the world knew how to do it until about the early 1800s, when a French monk is credited with bringing crystalline pottery to Europe. And when that came over, all the major ceramic pottery houses at the time, which was Cervez and Royal Dalton, Royal Copenhagen, and Villeray and Boch, all of them were going to produce crystalline pottery. I mean, they thought that this was the greatest thing in the world, until they found out that they had about a 50 to 70% failure ratio. That you have to be so exact in order for these crystals to come out just beautiful. And so all these guys went into this whole production line. They were going to produce crystalline pottery. And what happens is that they had so many failures that it turned out in Europe, only the wealthy could buy this crystalline pottery. And that's what it was. It was the ceramic art to the wealthy in Europe for a long time, until about the early 1900s, when Tassil Dote brought it over to St. Louis. And that's when it first came over to the United States. And it was played around with for a little bit there and back and forth until the computerized kiln came out. And that's when you got the exacting temperatures and being able to bring them up and down. And then, of course, the latest and greatest is the new kiln, developed by Paul Guile, which is the computerized gas kiln, which allows you to control not only temperature but the atmosphere inside the kiln. And the importance of controlling atmosphere, of course, is that at any time you can starve the kiln of oxygen and burn the oxygen right out of the glazes, and it creates these beautiful hues of your mauve colors and your blended colors and the different colors from top to bottom. And that's where the next phase of this is going in the United States. I get asked all the time, why do I do this? And I think the answer is pretty simple, is that, God gives us all talents to use, and He's blessed me with the ability to make beautiful ceramic art. And as a result, all the money that we make from selling our pottery goes to a ministry that we work for that helps homeless people. Kind of a win-win all the way around. And I certainly enjoy doing it and feel like I'm in God's will at the time.